Welcome back to Pulse Mongolia podcast. From Mongolia to listeners around the world, thank you so much for being with us. This podcast explores animals, philosophy, science, culture, memory, and the deep emotional connection between humans and non-human life. This episode explores a real and fascinating question. Why have so many cultures, medical professionals, families, and historians described animals behaving differently around death? And could science explain it, at least part of it? Because whether we live in Mongolia, Japan, Europe, or the United States, humans have been telling these stories for thousands of years. Even now, modern medicine still does not fully understand the sensory world animals experience. Long before hospitals and neuroscience, humans noticed something unusual about animals. Ancient civilizations often believed animals existed closer to the boundary between life and death than humans did. In Norse mythology, ravens were associated with battlefields, memory, and fate. In parts of Europe, owls become connected with death, omens, and the unknown night. In Mongolia and Central Asia, animals often carried spiritual symbolism connected to the natural order and unseen forces of life. Why? Partly because animals perceive the world differently than humans. Humans depend heavily on language and logic. Animals depend on senses that are often dramatically stronger than ours. Smell, hearing, vibration sensitivity, behavioral awareness, environmental perception, and before modern science existed, humans interpreted these abilities through mythology. What looked supernatural may sometimes have been biology humans simply could not explain yet, because even today, scientists continue discovering astonishing sensory abilities in animals. Dogs can detect seizures before they happen. Some animals can sense earthquakes before humans feel them. Certain dogs can identify cancers through scent detection with surprising accuracy. So the ancient human question remains, if animals can detect illness, what else they can detect? One of the most documented modern stories began inside a nursing home in Rhode Island, United States. A cat named Oscar lived at the Steerhouse Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. Oscar was not especially affectionate. He was known for being independent and selective around people. But nurses began noticing something strange. Oscar repeatedly climbed into bed beside patients shortly before they died, not once, not twice, but again and again. Medical staff eventually realized that when Oscar stayed beside the patient and refused to leave, death often followed within hours. Doctors and nurses became so convinced by the pattern that staff sometimes called family members when Oscar appeared beside the patient. This became internationally known after physician and researcher Dr. David Dosa documented the observations publicly. Importantly, this was not presented as magic. Instead, medical professionals began asking a scientific question. What was Oscar sensing? Researchers proposed several possibilities: body temperature changes, chemical changes, altered breathing patterns, metabolic shifts, scent changes human cannot detect, because human bodies undergo measurable biological changes during the dying process, and cats possesses an extraordinary sense of smell. In fact, many animals process chemical information at the levels humans cannot imagine. What humans experience emotionally, animals may first experience chemically. And perhaps Oscar was not predicting death. Perhaps he was perceiving it biologically before humans consciously recognize it. But emotionally, the story still affected people deeply, because even skeptical medical professionals admitted the pattern was difficult to ignore. Dogs may be even more emotionally complex around death. Throughout history, humans have described dogs refusing to leave dying owners, becoming anxious shortly before death, or grieving instantly afterward. And modern science strongly supports the idea that dogs are highly sensitive to human emotional and psychological status. Dogs can detect stress hormones, changes in heart rate, emotional distress, scent alterations, illness markers. Studies have shown dogs respond differently to human crying than to ordinary sounds. Some service dogs even alert owners before seizures or diabetic emergencies. This means dogs continuously monitor human biological conditions far more closely than most people realize. And when that approaches, the body changes dramatically. Breathing changes, circulation changes, chemistry changes, movement changes. A dog may notice these shifts long before humans emotionally process them. But there is another layer: attachment. Dogs evolved alongside humans for thousands of years. Some researchers describe dogs as uniquely adapted to human social behavior. They watch our faces, they monitor our tone, they follow emotional patterns. In many ways, dogs survive by studying humans, which may explain why stories of dogs waiting beside dying humans appear across almost every culture on earth. Not because dogs understand death philosophically like humans do, but because they understand absence, emotional change, and distress with extraordinary sensitivity. And perhaps sometimes they understand it before we do. So, why stories like this affect humans so deeply? Because that is the greatest uncertainty in human life, and animals often appear in moments where humans feel most vulnerable: grief, illness, loneliness, fear, silence. Animals do not speak human language, yet many people describe feeling understood by them during emotional extremes. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as nonverbal emotional attunement. Animals may not intellectually understand morality, but they often respond powerfully to human emotional status surrounding it. And this creates something psychologically profound. When humans feel isolated by suffering, animals often remain physically present, quietly, without judgment, without explanation, just presence. And perhaps this is why humans repeatedly create spiritual meaning around animals, because in a moment where language fails, presence becomes everything. Science has not fully mapped the sensory world of animals. Humans experience reality through limited biological systems. Animals experience reality differently. For example, dogs possess vastly stronger olfactory systems. Birds detect magnetic fields. Elephants communicate through low-frequency vibrations. Sharks detect electrical signals. Cats hear frequencies humans cannot. To animals, the world may contain layers humans never consciously perceive. And scientists continue discovering new sensory abilities every decade. This does not mean animals possess supernatural powers, but it does mean humans should remain humble about what animals may perceive biologically, especially around illness, stress, aging, and death. The deeper science advances, the more we realize humans are not the center of perception. We are simply one species experiencing reality one particular way. Perhaps the most important question is not whether animals predict death. Perhaps the real question is, why do humans feel comforted by the idea that animals stay close during our most fragile moments? Maybe because animals represent something humans fear losing: presence, instinct, connection to nature, emotional honesty. Animals do not care about status or money or social performance. At the end of life, these things disappear anyway, and perhaps that's why stories about animals near death feel strangely peaceful rather than frightening, because they remind humans that life is still connected to something older and quieter than civilization itself. A dog beside a hospital bed, a cat refusing to leave someone alone, a raven watching silently from distant tree. These images stay in human memory because they touch something ancient, the feeling that humans are not entirely alone in the final moments of life. For thousands of years, humans have looked into the eyes of animals and sensed intelligence, emotion, and awareness beyond words. And even now, modern science continues discovering how extraordinary animal perception truly is. Maybe these stories are coincidence. Maybe they are biology. Maybe they are emotional projection. Or maybe humans still underestimate the inner worlds of animals. But one thing is certain: animals have always walked beside humanity through love, grief, survival, and death itself, quietly watching, quietly listening, quietly staying, and perhaps that's why humans never forget them. Thank you for listening to tonight's episode of The Animals That Knew. If this episode resonated with you, please follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and major global platforms. You can also support our mission for animals in Mongolia through education, awareness, storytelling, and future humane initiatives. Please share this episode with someone who loves animals, philosophy, science, or mysterious stories from the edge of human understanding. And remember, sometimes the quietest creatures leave the deepest mark on human history. Thank you so much for listening. Pause Mongolia podcast. Follow this podcast, write a review, and share it with your friends and family. Together, we can grow this podcast and bring more awareness and compassion into the world.